We'll start. Good evening. My name's Kent Lovelace, Professor and Director of Aviation Industry Relations here at the University of North Dakota. We have two distinguished and experienced presenters this evening. And the title of the presentation this evening is a conversation with airline leadership navigating through a pandemic and beyond. Our first speaker is Captain Bob Waltz. He's Vice President of Flight Operations with Southwest Airlines. And following him will be Captain Curt Brunjes. He's the Managing Director of United Aviate and Pilot Strategy at United Airlines. After they make their presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. And for those of you that are on the broadcast, you can just hit the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and type in your questions. So we're really excited about the presentations this evening. And gentlemen, thanks so much for participating. We really appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to you, Bob. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. And can you hear me okay, Kent?
You're good.
Thank you, sir. And good to see you all this evening. And I very much appreciate the invitation tonight. And not only am I a speaker, but I'm also a student here in the program, in the PhD program. And I can't say enough about the university. So big fan for all of you involved. Please stick with it. It's a great program. As we talk tonight, a slide, if you would, please. A couple of topics we're going to cover just briefly. Curt and I will give a kind of a brief presentation on both of these, but then we're really here for your Q&A. So please be thinking about those questions that we can ask, that we can answer for you as industry professionals. I'll concentrate a little bit more on how an airline can thrive in a world of uncertain customer demand. How the airline, again, a perspective on how the airlines will bounce back. Again, each airline may have its own, unique kind of spin on that, but I'll offer you one view. And then a couple of the issues that are crucial to us as we go forward, not only with surviving the pandemic, but then we also look about what's going on in our country today. And I think it's important for us to take a moment as carriers and as companies to discuss what are some of the things that we're doing to increase diversity, equality, and inclusion on the flight deck, in the support staff, and in the management team. And then we'll talk a little bit about the changing nature of pilot development, from a perspective of my company. I know Curt will probably give you a little bit more from the perspective of United, and then the pilot demand forecast. I'll defer a little bit more in Curt's direction tonight, but again, so please have your questions ready in just a bit. Slide, please. So just where are we today? We know we're in the middle, obviously, of the pandemic. We know that we see all kinds of information about what's happening with the airlines. Are bookings going up and down? What does customer demand look like? And how sticky, if you want to use that term, is customer demand, i.e., how well do reservations stick after they're made as we see a change in the COVID numbers, both in our local communities and in the nation. So just to give some perspective for Southwest pre-pandemic, right before we had the first words about COVID, here in the U.S., we were on average operating about 4,500 flights a day, moving somewhere between 400,000 and some days 450, some days 475,000 people a day, doing that roughly with about 700 aircraft, to give you some idea. Today, as we go into the world of the pandemic, we're on average probably moving somewhere between, on a low day, about 135,000 passengers, to a good day, maybe a little north of 200,000. And we're doing that, say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 plus aircraft doing that. So you can see that the rapid drop off, half the numbers of passengers that we've seen in the past. And then you can imagine what that does to yields, the amount of money that you make per ticket. These trends are just representative that I wanted to show you, but it shows that week by week how much they can vary. And when you'll start to see some of the, this is illustrative of some of the recent COVID numbers starting to increase, as the trends were going up, now they're going down again. And unfortunately, what we're seeing kind of industry-wide is a response that was similar to what we saw last summer in July, August, when the numbers went up again here in the US. We saw the stickiness of reservations going forward begin to drop off. And again, everybody kind of adjusted their networks down. This is the environment we operate in today, and it's one that most of us, we don't have models for. Unfortunately, we're getting better at what a model in this environment would look like, but it is an environment in which it really is unsustainable long term. Slide, please. Thank you. A lot of numbers on here. These are just representative, but I think what's important to point out, look at the revenue trends that's on the left side, and these are year over year. This is all information that's publicly available from our company's 8K statement, which we issue, to the SEC and to our investors. But as you can see, October down 65% year over year. November, again, 60 to 65%. Same predictions for December. And that being said, we even in that time made some choices we were restricting middle seats. We decided to open those middle seats. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment and why. And that's an important first step as we start towards recovery. But as you can see, the sustained downturn continues. And unfortunately, we see that going into next year as we're watching those COVID trends. So it's really not all about gloom and doom. It's just the reality of the matter is it's a very tough environment right now. Average cash burn on the right side of this graph, just to give you an idea, and we have cut costs, down to the bone. But when you're looking at roughly, in the neighborhood of about $10 million, $12 million a day, that's kind of bare bones. You can see how quickly you can burn through cash. And all of us as large airlines, we suffer against that model. But, there are some glimmers of hope. So slide, please. So the COVID response, hopefully, I'm not sure how familiar you all are with a number of surveys out there that they perform a holistic look and look at integrating layered approaches to how we deal with COVID in the airline environment. There's the Harvard study, there's the US Transcom study, the Iata study. All of them point in the same direction, that the transmission of COVID SARS on aircraft can be minimized almost to the point where it is negligible, and that can be done through a layered approach. The Harvard study has a lot of detail worthy of a look, worthy of the latest science that was done independently, of the airlines, but with good research on aircraft. Basically what it says is that taking a multi-layered approach, doing things like overnight cleaning, disinfection, things that, each airline has its own protocol. We use electrostatic cleaning and an antimicrobial that kills SARS on contact. Those types of precautions with masks, and again, there's been a lot of discussions around masks, their value, but the real value of wearing masks is twofold. One, it's a mutual protection for both folks, not only the wearer, but someone in their close proximity. But it's also really a confidence builder. In all honesty, the number one reason we get the feedback that folks are willing to fly today that we see consistently has got to do with mask wear. That's what our customers demand out of us as providers, and also out of each other. So as we go through this with the proper precautions, we know we can operate in this environment safely. But what value is that if you don't have places to go or a society that's open? That's the other challenge that we're all dealing with as we speak today. Slide, please. Thank you. So with, again, as a Boeing 737 operator, predominantly, we fly, multiple versions of the airplane, but again, we're really good at the one airplane that we fly. You can see that the cabin air has exchanged, lots of word on this slide, but two things that are important: air exchange rate and HEPA filtration. The HEPA filters that we use on the aircraft and that they use on the 737 are very similar to the same type of filters that are used in surgical units. So you can actually pick out down to the 0.3 micron level, basically particulate matter in the air to include the virus. That being said, again, I think the urban legend is we get on an airplane and it's essentially a petri dish. I'm closed in and there's no air movement. When you're running the recirc fans on the airplane and the packs, you're moving air through the cabin. As you can see, cabin air is fully exchanged with fresh air approximately 20 to 30 times per hour. So again, that movement of air, both on the ground and in the air, is crucial. Slide, please. Thank you. So as you can see, there are things we can do. There are things that, the word has to get out. We have to build public confidence. And then meanwhile, in our communities, we have to have confidence as well to go to begin to operate. So it's really all about customer demand. So that being said, if anybody out there knows exactly when the customers are going to come back, my challenge to you is you should stop being a student and go work for a financial house, because you could probably make a lot of money. We know it will come. It's a matter of having the right tools. That might include the vaccine. That includes all the precautions we take on the aircraft. And I think it includes precautions that are taken in the community so that folks are confident to fly. Against that backdrop, again, another topic I wanted to talk about briefly, as we cannot afford, I think any of us as companies and all of us as citizens cannot afford to be blind to what's going on in our society today and the challenges that we've seen amidst the pandemic of the discussion around diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I'm really excited to see that, for years, and I'm a prior military person prior to coming to Southwest, and we've dealt with a lot of these issues through my whole time in the Air Force. I joined the Air Force when I was 18 years old. That you do not solve problems by just supporting them. You've got to take them on actively. And I'm happy to see our company has set out very specific goals from our board of directors all the way down through our leadership teams, how we hire, who we hire. And again, not hiring about lessening the requirements or lessening the ability. It's about widening the aperture for who you consider and ensure that folks feel welcome. They feel like they have a valid chance when they apply. And that starts from the first contact with a candidate for your company all the way through their time at the company. So we're excited to get there. Southwest has always prided itself on being a place where you can bring your best self, whatever your best self looks like, and you're going to be accepted. This is just another level of that really has us very excited. And it goes everywhere from pilot hiring, but it goes across the board, and then in all of our internal hiring and our practices there for promotion as well. Slide, please, if you would. Thank you. And I'm winding down to my last slide or two. So one thing I just want to put a quick pitch out for, it feels like we're in an environment where folks may ask, hey, what can I do, especially as an aspiring commercial pilot? And I'm either, just starting here at the university, I'm a CFI, I'm, out there flying maybe for a regional. Realize this too shall pass. These are tough days, and they may get tougher before it gets easier, but in our industry, it's very much cyclical. That being said, we're very proud of our program called Destination 225, which continues. 225, again, is the compass heading for Southwest. You can do the math there. But we have various pathways, whether it's cadet coming in, someone with no experience, university, military, employee, where we have partnerships with other airlines. We've got, regionals, we've got partnerships with universities. We have relationships such that no matter, we can work with you wherever you're coming from to meet you where you're at, to find a path to get you to hopefully into the right seat one day at the airline. So again, a link here, and it's a shameless pitch, but I'll throw it out there for you. It's a program we're very proud of, and we've just moved. I think we just had 2 cadets move on to, I believe, with ExoJet now. They've been placed there, and we still have movement, and we're supporting that program even in these times, because this is important for the long-term health of the airline. Slide, please. And that being said, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Curt, and I'll be available for questions later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bob. I appreciate it. And very nice delivery. I'm going to direct all the hard questions to you.
Oh, no.
All right. So I'm happy to be here addressing you all. And it was just a little under a year ago that we went up to UND and we launched our Aviate program and UND, of course, is a valued partner of the program. So I'll come to you from a little bit from the Aviate perspective, but also to, like Bob did, come to you a bit from the broader airline perspective and how we're finding our way through the COVID environment. Next slide, please. So this is just my background. I'm the managing director of Aviate and Pilot Strategy, which means I've been incubating the Aviate program here for the last couple of years, and I can speak to it, but also looking at our overall strategy and our pipeline, and we can speak about that, and then the changes in it and what we're doing to adapt to the current environment. 33 years at United, I'm a 787 captain and check airman. I'm also an Air Force guy like Bob. I'm a pilot examiner, so I keep my fingers in the general aviation community, really happy to do so, and a small airplane owner, and I live on an air park in Phoenix. Next slide. So like Bob, I'd like to talk a little bit about how we're going to thrive in this uncertain world of customer demand. So we've made some short-term changes to our business, and we're going to make some longer-term changes to adapt to not only this uncertainty, but the fact that there probably is more uncertainty to come, right? This may not be the last, probably isn't the last pandemic. It's certainly not the first or last downturn. However, having said that, I think it's actually a good time to be pursuing the career. So I want to give a lot of encouragement to those of you that are in the aviation program, and I suspect most of you are. We have a little bit of a metamorphosis going on. It started before the COVID environment in the way we develop and select pilots. So I can speak to that a little bit, and I can put a little bit of a shameless pitch, as Bob did, on the Aviate program, but it also just reflects how we think about things at United, and I think many of the other airlines are thinking about them. And I'm very pleased to be here with Bob because Southwest is a great competitor in the marketplace, but it's also a very different business model, and it's really interesting for you all to contemplate that and think about where you want to work, where you want to grow your career. Next slide. So let's talk about thriving in a world of uncertainty. So we're preparing for bounce back at United, and I'm sure Southwest is too. We're having to suffer through this current environment. I didn't bring the candid slides that Bob did, but we're in a position, and we've released this publicly too, where we're losing about $25 million a day. We have a little bit bigger network and a few more airplanes than Southwest does, a little bigger revenue base, but more importantly, we have exposure in international markets. And the international markets have been particularly hard hit, and we were the first ones hit because we have the largest international network to China, and those were the first markets that were hit. However, in spite of that, with great leadership and vision that we have at United, we've launched a number of very proactive steps. So one was industry-leading research, and Bob has referred to some of this. You can Google, if you want, the coughing dummy studies, and you'll see pictures of United airplanes flying around with these mechanized dummies in the cabin coughing, and we were measuring particulates and how they moved through the cabin and how they infiltrated into the cockpit and how well the precautions worked. So we spent a lot of time and effort. We had our engineering team working on that as a top priority for quite a few months. We came to understand and realize, as Bob pointed out, that the transmissivity from one passenger to the next is not very great with the circulation systems and the filtration systems we have on the aircraft. It turns out that if you're sitting side by side in a cabin with someone, you're both wearing masks, it's the equivalent of a 13-foot social distance. So we feel really good about that. The airflow is from top to bottom. So unlike a restaurant that you might go to where the airflow is horizontal, we've measured this and we have the science and the data behind it. And we know it's one of the safest places that you can be. But like Southwest, we've implemented safety protocols. We were the first to require masks on board. We are pioneering COVID testing sites. San Francisco COVID testing pre-departure to get to Tahiti was one of our first, and now to the Hawaii markets also. And we're testing that over to London, and there'll be some other sites where we'll be doing that. So it's, one of our mantras right now is testing, 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 not just to restore confidence, but to help proactively get to a place where we're safely flying and moving people around. We're blessed to have the largest wide-body fleet in the Western Hemisphere, so more wide-bodies than any other airline in the Western Hemisphere. And it's enabled us to pivot our business a little bit to cargo flying. We've done over 8,000 cargo flights, cargo-only flights on our triples and our 787s over the last 9 months or so. Proud to announce that the day after Thanksgiving, we did our first vaccine flight. So we're the only airline presently carrying cargo vaccines around. We can carry 1.1 million vaccines per trip in the triple. And we've done, as I understand it, either 5 or 6 trips as of today. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 million vaccines have been brought to the US from Europe in the bellies of United 777s. We've taken this opportunity to take a look at places that we can move our flying that either responds to customer demand currently or anticipates growth opportunities in the future. And the 2 bullets kind of illuminate those 2 positions. So a little reflective of Southwest and their point-to-point system, which United is not particularly point-to-point. We're usually a hub and spoke airline, but we've added a bunch of point-to-point flying. So Boston, Cleveland, Columbus, Indianapolis, LaGuardia, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh to Florida destinations. That's point-to-point flying. It's not something that we have typically done in the past. And that's reflecting the consumer demand that we see right now. And it's consumer demand that naturally Southwest has. We've had to pivot our business a little bit to capture some of that business. But we've also taken advantage of certain opportunities in the marketplace. So we've launched Newark to Johannesburg, Newark to Maui, San Francisco to Bangalore, Chicago, Delhi to Kona, Tel Aviv, Dulles, Washington Dulles to Accra, and Lagos in Africa. So we've launched a number of long-haul wide-body destinations and segments that we haven't flown previously. And this is to respond to demand and movements, strategic movements in the marketplace that we see are providing opportunity. And I can tell you internally at United, I'm spending a lot of time because I'm on the bounce back team, making sure that our company is ready to pivot back into business at full strength. And presently we're anticipating that 2021 is going to be a recovery year, and that, full demand probably won't resume entirely till 2022. But as Bob will probably second, we don't know. And if you all know, you should be, placing bets because you're smarter than we are. But we think normalcy is somewhere in a 1.5 year range off. But in spite of that, and I'm sure Southwest is doing the same thing, if we think we're going to be back at full strength in 2022, we have some actions we have to take in 2021, and we will be taking those. Next slide. Next slide is meant to be encouraging, which is, if you just look narrowly through the lens of United Airlines, we can't not hire pilots. 50% of our pilots, 6,000 pilots, retire in the next 10 years, half of our pilots. So we have a tremendous exodus and a bunch of predictable demand that's going to happen over the next 10 years and 20 years, right? 20 years, 90% of our pilots. So demographically, we have a fairly aged pilot population, as do most of the airlines to varying degrees. But even without growth, we were predicting tremendous demand. We've had early retirements as part of our recovery efforts. So we'll have a little bit of pent-up demand here when we get going. So candidly, we expect a fairly abrupt and rapid rebound of our hiring that'll probably be well in advance of the full customer recovery, customer demand recovery. The next slide will show you just a little bit more of an industry view. American, Delta, United, and Southwest also, and FedEx, have a lot of pilots retiring. So it's in percentages on the left side of the scale. But we're losing 3, 4, 5% of our pilots every year. These are really big numbers, and this is going to create great opportunities. So as Bob said, this too will pass. If you look at, I didn't bring the slide that shows the ups and downs of hiring. This is a down, and we've had downs, for the financial crisis, for 9/11, the air traffic controllers strike, back to deregulation. The best time to get hired at an airline is right after we come out of one of these troughs, and we're in a trough right now. We'll come out of it predictably 6 months, 12, 18 months at some point, and it's going to be a wonderful time to catch the hiring wave at the airlines. And many of you listening to this call are in that range where 6, 12, 18 months from now, you'll be meeting with a lot of demand for pilots. Next, please. So speaking of that, getting into the airlines and being hired by the airlines has morphed just a little bit. And that is that there are now 2 ways into the airline. It used to be traditional hiring, which was we posted availability for jobs, or we didn't even need to most of the time. We just stacked up resumes. We sorted those resumes by qualifications, and we took the people that we thought were the most experienced, which tended to be flight time, PIC time, turbine time, very traditional things. Typically, we had a college degree requirement at most of the airlines. That's traditional hiring that exists. It's still thriving and will thrive. and it'll be a viable segment of our hiring population for a while. But more and more, the airlines, Southwest included, American, Delta, and United, have created pathway programs. So in the case of United, we did it for a little different reason than Southwest. Southwest doesn't have a reliance upon a regional network, as does United. But we have a number of partners at United, as does American and Delta. And we need to ensure that those airlines remain well-staffed with pilots. So we have a vested interest in ensuring a good value proposition that brings pilots to our United Express carriers and then brings them to United. And the best way for us to do that is to create partnerships. So even 5 years ago, before I got involved, we had career path programs, we called them, where essentially we offered United Airline jobs early to people at our regionals. And that was to make the value proposition of being at, a Mesa Airlines, let's say, or Air Wisconsin, to improve that value proposition. So you'd want to go there because while you were there, you had the guarantee of a United Airlines job. Well, as all of you, I think, are now aware, at UND, as a student at UND, you can interview for Aviate, you can be accepted, and we can put you on a pathway that brings you to United. And that pathway includes getting an education at UND, flight instructing for a while, moving on to a regional partner, and then in a very predictable manner, moving on to United Airlines. So that's what our Aviate program does, is it strings that together. The next slide will show this a little bit more graphically, which is we built Aviate to be an end-to-end solution where you can see the training partners. Those are the arrows that come in. UND is a training partner, right? It's also an academic partner. We have a UA Academy, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But we've gone all the way back to the 0 hour point and made investments. We've invested in a primary training academy. We have partnerships along the way. As you well understand, the United Express partners are there and have been for a long time. But we also have time building partners, so the flight schools, the commercial flight schools, and some Part 135 partners. So we mean for this to be an end-to-end solution where when you join Aviate, you've been accepted by us, we give you a conditional job offer. You don't have to interview at United ever again. You just stick in our pathway. We keep our eyes on you. We coach you and mentor you along the way. And you'll end up coming to United as a very highly qualified and consistent product for us. And we look forward to that. If you look to the left of the UA Academy, you'll see youth education programs. We've partnered with EAA. The value of that is EAA has a program that many of you might know about called Young Eagles. We're now the official partner of Young Eagles. And that offers the opportunity for 8 to 17-year-olds to go out to the airport, get a free flight, and get a free logbook and get a private pilot kit. Some things that will really enable youth that might not otherwise have access to the cockpit to be able to get to it at low or no cost. So we have the exact same mindset that Bob has already so well articulated, which is that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are just absolutely an essential part of the fabric of who we are and who we want to be going forward. So we've put a big wrapper around that called diversity recruitment programs, and Aviate is built for diversity. And one of the ways that we're doing that, and we can go to the next slide and I can speak to this, is that by buying a flight school, we have a unique ability to go to the market with something that would be difficult for another airline to do. So we can go to the market and lower the barriers to entry to zero or very, very close to zero to appeal to the populations that we want. And not just want, we want to appeal to a very broad population. We want to choose top talent that are going to be successful in our program, but we don't want it to be the case that women or racial and ethnic minorities aren't aware of the opportunities that they have at United. So our talent acquisition team is going to use this tool and the fact that my program and the people that I work with are going to be lowering the barriers to entry so that this will be accessible to anyone. Kind of like the military is now. When Bob and I joined the military is a wonderful way to get opportunity that you might not otherwise have, and the federal government pays for it. In this case, United Airlines is behind it. So we're trying to promote the career so that we can expand participation, so that we can be more diverse. We're proud of the diversity that we already have in the cockpit. The overall population of women in the pilot population looks to be about 5%. In the United cockpits, it looks to be about 7.5%. But 7.5% isn't good enough, right? In the general population, it's 50%. So we have a notion and we have a target that's quite aggressive, and we really want to see a much, much higher participation of women and racial and ethnic minorities, and we're going to facilitate that. Equally, we really want to lead the industry in developing curriculum. For a long time now at Southwest and at United, we've taken data from our flight operations and from our flight training organization, and we fed it back into how we develop and train our pilots. We now have a unique opportunity through our acquisition of a flight school to bring it all the way back into the way we form our pilots back in the private commercial instrument training phases. So we're excited about the ability to do that, to maybe innovate in flight training. And some of you are aware the FAA isn't always the most innovative, but when we get behind these programs and we prove it with data, we think that they'll be our partners in it. All along the way, we do mean to defend Aviate as the fastest path to United Airlines. And we're proud of the culture that we have, both for its diversity and inclusiveness, as well as just our core 4 values of being safe, caring, dependable, and efficient. Great culture that we really want to share more broadly. This is one of the ways that we're going to do it. One more slide, I think, is my last. For questions, we're going to do some live questions right now, of course. But if you have questions that span beyond this presentation, aviate@united.com is a great way to get to us. And then also social media, United Aviate and Curt Brunjes. I have an Instagram site myself. We're trying to, speak to our target audience in the way that they like to be spoken to. And I know with my young kids in the house, social media, Instagram is a great way for us to deliver messaging and to have two-way dialogue. And I do it all the time on my Instagram site because I can be a little bit more authentic and a little less filtered on it. So I do that, and I share learnings and things that happen to me in the cockpit at the 787 and things that happen in the cockpit when I'm giving check rides. I share on my Instagram. So with that, I'll flip it back over to Elizabeth, who I think is going to moderate a little bit some questions that might come to us. And thanks for the opportunity.
Well, first of all, thank both of you. Great presentations, a lot of great information. I know I personally have not flown on an airliner since the first week in March, and I miss it desperately. So it was so great to hear from both of you, all of the amazing research and work that has been put into making flying safe. So thank you. I think I need to book our next family vacation now. So just a reminder, the Q&A is open. We have a few questions filtering in, but now is your chance. We've got 2 industry leaders here from 2 different major airlines available to answer your questions. So please do type those questions in. And while you're doing that, I think I'll kick it off with the first question. So there's been a lot in the news recently, in the last 10 months about this vaccine. And I know the FDA is meeting tomorrow, I believe, to start deliberations on the first vaccine coming online. On a flip token, I've also read that the FAA hasn't necessarily approved that vaccine yet for pilots. And I was wondering if you guys have any insights regarding that and what you're advising your crews.
That seems like a hard one, so I think you should take it.
Thanks, Curt. I appreciate that. We were having, Elizabeth and I were having a little discussion earlier before the session tonight. We have our Airlines for America, which is one of the lobby groups that we have that, and it's wonderful. One of the things that's important, I think, for everybody to know is that as airlines, yes, we have, competition in the business space and that, but really what we spend so much more of our time doing is we don't compete on safety. We compare notes, we share information. Again, the highest level of safety for the flying public is what we all share in common. We have good spirited, fun competition around the business side. But in that, at the Operations Council, at the Ops Council meeting, one of the topics that we are discussing is a little bit of a dichotomy, if you will, in the FAA's view and some of the varying views we hear around the vaccine. Everything from, crew members and employees, and I'm sure Curt sees the same thing at United, have questions about, will it be mandatory? Will we have to take it? Or can I take it? When can I take it? Are you going to facilitate so that I can get, access to it? To the FAA, it's kind of the same gamut from, will it be mandated for crews, to, is it a grounding item for a pilot for a certain amount of time if they take the vaccine? So it's really that fluid right now, and we hope to get a little clarity here soon. And Curt, I don't know if you're hearing anything different, but it feels like it's a little all over the map right now.
Yeah, I think there's no certainty to it. I'd be surprised if eventually being within weeks or months, if the crews aren't authorized to take the vaccine. We are characterized as essential workers and frontline workers, but there are some hoops to jump through here.
Well, good. And that gave us plenty of time to get a lot of great questions into the Q&A. Again, students and attendees continue to put those questions in. I guess two students are asking this question of you, Bob. Will UND be added to the list of universities approved for the Southwest Destination 225 program?
That is a great question. And again, we love the partnerships we have with our universities as they exist today. We're always looking for new partners. Of course, we also want to be respectful of, there are other agreements that have been reached with, other airlines as well with universities. So we're always looking for those partners. I can't give a definite answer here tonight, but we are always looking to expand those options. And I think as Curt so well put, it's the university pathway, as we would call it, from UND, is such an important pathway, especially with you have a person who's building experience, as an, gets their basic rating and then serving as an instructor at the university. And whatever pathway program you go on, I highly recommend them in that it's then a chance along the way to be steeped in, we use a risk resource management model. United uses something similar, different title, but you get a chance to grow up, air quotes, in the airline environment, which is so different than the days of, when Curt and I first started flying, either the military taught you one way or so many of our pilots had so many different ways of getting there that you really don't necessarily start getting steeped in that philosophy until you show up as a first officer at that airline. There's years of experience that you could have touched that aviator, how much better they are in that it's just part and parcel of their thought process. We can teach skills. That's something that just takes time, but the mental game is something that takes just as much time. So big fan. I hope we can get there at some point.
Well, pathway or no pathway, I know we have a lot of great alumni that fly for Southwest Airlines as well as United Airlines. So, Curt, a couple of questions for you regarding the Aviate program. I understand that ExpressJet unfortunately ceased operations this summer, and curious to see if you're going to be adding other United Express partners to Aviate.
Right. So good question, and thank you for it. We are consolidating down, so I think you'll see a little bit of a move at United and probably in the industry to consolidate a little bit. We had a lot of regional partners. Doesn't mean the flying's going away. What we did was we consolidated the Embraer 145 to Commute Air, and Commute Air is, I think, uniquely the only regional hiring right now, and they're hiring quite robustly because we'll be growing that. So one part of the answer is that while the number of partners has diminished, the flying has not, and when it comes back, the hiring will be reflective of the fact that we're flying just as many airframes and as many seat miles and as many block hours. Having said that, we do have a couple of partners that are not yet in the Aviate program, and yes, we're talking about them, and I think that there'll be some expansion of the number of partners that are in the Aviate program. But I'd also say this, is that if students conclude that they want to work at United or at Southwest or Delta or American, right, all good choices, they need to kind of divine what the quickest way and the most effective way to get to that airline is. And then don't worry about the small stuff. 2 years or 3 years at a regional is small stuff in a 35-year career. So don't let that persuade you too much. Flying at Commute Air or Mesa or Air Wisconsin, it's absolutely fine. All of them are good, safe airlines that will build your skills. But we will be adding some partners.
All right, thank you. One of the students, we have a number of international students within our program, is asking about, are international students able to enter the pathway, but also what opportunities would you have in your companies for international, whether it's not just pilots, but managers? Can you address that? Yeah,
so I mean, international is diversity, and diversity is something that we seek, right? Because it makes us a better company and it makes us a better culture. So, we welcome diversity, whether it be international or in any other form at United with open arms. When it comes to the Aviate program and any pilot at United, actually, they have to have a legal right to work in the U.S. is the way we put it in our documentation, which means they have to either be citizens or green cards or whatever it is. We don't sponsor visas. I don't know if it's any different, Bob, at your airline, but legal right to work in the U.S. is what.
No, Curt, I think you captured it well. We're very interested in, we value that diversity of thought, both on the flight deck on the management team, and entry level positions all the way up. Obviously, for legal reasons, the legal right to work here in the United States is just kind of table stakes for that. But I think you'll find I would imagine that's pretty similar with all of the airlines. We are very much an internationally flavored, even Southwest with, we have an international presence, not as much as some of our other contemporaries. But again, with our expansion into, again, multilingual, South Central America, we have interests. Again, we hope as we all come out of this pandemic that those growth phases start again. And I think it's going to be, all of us are going to have to adapt a little bit in the markets that we serve, the volume of the traffic that we see. So lots of great opportunities. And I think our international folks are really could be at the center of a lot of that opportunity for really any of the major airlines.
Well, thank you. And we should note too that it's not uncommon to have those U.S. citizen requirements. We have a pathway program with Korean Air, and it's very similar. You have to be a Korean citizen as well to apply for that pathway program. So again, if there's international students from Korea, there is a pathway for you as well. I know both of you said you were Air Force, but you've seen a lot of pilots and you've flown with a lot of pilots through the years. What would you recommend as good ways to build flight hours after graduating from a collegiate program?
I'll start with that. I'll start, and then Bob, you can correct me. How's that? So of course we love military pilots, because they've been through a very rigorous selection process and very rigorous training that the military oversees, and at a cost that no commercial operation could ever bear. So we love military guys. But the vast majority of our pilots now and in the future will be coming through civilian channels. So I think it's a really legitimate question. I think our view towards it is it looks a lot like the pipeline that we've built. We love a rigorous academic preparation as a foundation, and UND does that, and does that, without many peers in the country. So we think that's a great foundation. Thereafter, I'm a big fan of people who flight instruct. I think the best way, or a tutor for that matter, right? The best way to really solidify your knowledge on something is to have to convey it to someone else. So I think some degree of flight instructing is very, very skills building. And I'm a fan of that. It's not absolutely essential. You don't have to get a CFI to get to United or to Southwest, but I think it is skills building. So I love to see it. I love to see also people that then get another little bit of experience. So we have some Part 135 partners, as does Southwest with ExoJet. So the 135 experience, certificated operation, a little different than the airline. Great skills build. Ameriflight is one of our partners. They fly older airplanes, cargo operation, but it's certificated. It's some real flying, it builds some real skills. Single pilot IFR and a Beech 99, that makes for really good skills build. And then of course our regional partners, where more and more will be incorporating United SOPs, procedures. So they'll get the airline experience before they get to United. So that's my answer, which is a very comprehensive, start at a UND, flight instruct, potentially go to a 135, then go to United Express, then come to United. I think that makes for a wonderful pilot. Fly upside down at some point. We'll be putting it in our curriculum, but if not, go out and do a little bit of aerobatic training at some point. That's off the cuff, something I think that's valuable. But over to you, Bob.
No, that's a great answer, Curt. And really, I would second. We are, we have a split between military and non-military pilots. There are different flavors to both. Pluses and minuses to both, but together, and we really try to actively pair folks even in training that aren't from the same background to even start that kind of assimilation, if you will, at that point. Definitely building skill experience matters. The academic rigor, I think, is a great discussion. We also look for along the way, if you can, and again, everybody has a different experience, and we want to be sure that we credit, depending upon the background you come from, some level of leadership, if you can, if you have an opportunity along the way. It doesn't mean that you end up being a 119 chief pilot or a director of operations, though we have a lot of folks who do. Along the way, we've had folks who have managed small flight operations. We've had folks who get a chance to interact and get an understanding of how their role fits in the larger team. Team is so important at Southwest. So we love to see aspects of that, as well as very competent folks, very competent from a skills-based is table stakes. And I think that's probably true of all the airlines, though we all recognize those pathways may look different. Leadership may look different for folks. We don't want to inadvertently say you have to have been a military, designee or a evaluator or something like that, when we know that there's a certain path to get there. And in the civilian side, you may have flown in small companies that there may only be a small number of check airmen. There are other ways to demonstrate leadership. We want to just see those folks who we know are not only technically competent, but are also going to be just good additions to kind of the corporate culture, which is a culture of servant leadership. And I think you'd find that consistent across most airlines, that it is the mechanics and the skills are table stakes, but pilots at an airline are leaders. 3 stripes, 4 stripes, it really doesn't matter what you're wearing on the shoulder. To the rest of your operation, when you step up, you're a leader. So we expect that kind of foundation, and then we'll grow with you from there. So thankfully, a program like UND will prepare you well for that. And we see that across the folks who we see applying. So very similar, I think, to what Curt alluded to, but we are aware the paths may get a little different, especially as the military path kind of dries up a little bit, that those numbers come down. And folks coming out of some of these training programs now, again, big fan of the upside down flying, but you may or may not get a chance to do that. We do love, I think like Curt does too, there's nothing wrong with growing up on glass, but there's something to be said about flying steam jets builds character. And you may not even see one again at your next carrier, but it is, if you have that opportunity, I would challenge you along the way. It just makes you better. You have a better scan, a better cross check, and you're a little more oriented towards problem solving. So all of those things, hopefully that's useful information you can act on.
Good, that was great information. And again, we do have an aerobatic program and an aerobatic team that's won quite a few national champions. So I think that's going to just put a good plug in for getting involved with that activity. Going to kind of switch gears a little bit back to COVID. One of the questions is, how are the airlines going to gain more public confidence regarding COVID? Now, I know I myself, just listening to you two gentlemen talk about it, I definitely built my confidence, but what is the plan for the airlines to get that message out publicly?
So I'll start with this, I think, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think when we published the results of the scientific work that we did, it was the most searched upon thing in our social media. It had the highest public interest that we could measure, and we measure that stuff all the time. So we think the public is really hungry for data and for information. And so we're trying to be, as an airline, very, very data driven and very, very transparent, because the data actually suggests and supports the notion that flying can be safe with the layers of precautions that are put in place, as Bob has articulated. So what we're trying to do to build confidence is to share the data, be transparent, be conservative, take the steps that we need to take with testing and with wipes and with the cleaning protocols that we have, but let people know what they are. We're not fully going to recover without a vaccine. We understand that and we appreciate that. But people do need to travel or want to travel, and we want to provide that for them in a safe manner. And so for us, it's communicate, and being transparent. Bob, I'm sure you have a few things that you can add.
No, that's well said, Curt, and I agree. And as we look through focus groups, I think all of our airlines deal with that. We gather feedback from our customers, and we also monitor very closely, customer behavior, trying to understand. For instance, when we opened up our middle seats here in December, initially there was some concern about, early on, folks thought that was a great reason to fly Southwest. Obviously, that's not a sustainable model going forward. And as Curt had mentioned, we wanted to take a very data-driven, scientific approach. We weren't ready to come off of that policy until we saw data that could facilitate that folks could fly on the aircraft, that indicated they could fly on the aircraft safely in close proximity, but masked up with all of the precautions. And all of the work that like United had done, and all the studies that we've shown have really shown that our customers, we didn't see a big change in customer behavior even after the middle seats open. I think all of the airlines are trying to be responsive to be flexible with their customers as we help them navigate through these changing times. We think, and I think this is as much Bob speaking as it is the airline, that it's not even so much. It'd be nice if we could get past some of the urban legends around, airplanes being, tight air, you're constrained and the air is not moving. So we can show that scientifically, but also I think in what goes on in the communities, it does us no good. We can all put 100 flights to Hawaii every day, but if the state is locked down for travelers, and again, I'm not trying to make any kind of political statement or throw a barb, but as states start to unwind and we get that confidence that Curt has alluded to, that the vaccine will bring the right prophylaxis and the way to treat people, as we continue to understand that, I don't think it's necessarily the flying itself that's slowing down folks traveling again. It's that total picture of, can I leave here? Can I go there? And not inadvertently, hurt somebody on one end or the other in my family in that process. Once we get there, I think we're going to feel a lot of pent up demand. And as Curt has mentioned, maybe it's as soon as the end of 21, maybe it's a little bit longer, maybe it's even sooner than that. I don't know. People will want to travel again, but they have to have somewhere to go if they're going to travel.
Okay. Well, Captain Waltz, this question is for you. What are you currently pursuing as a PhD?
Underwater basket weaving. No, I guess that's it. That used to be the answer back in the day, but no, actually, aeronautical science, a PhD in aeronautical science, and as you know, in the Part 121 carriers, it feels like it was just. It's been a number of years now. We had to implement Part 5 safety management system at each of the U.S. carriers by requirement. So it seemed like a very logical time as we were bringing that on to my airline. I've been at Southwest about 20 years now. It was a great time. When you see in the research, there's not a lot of research about how you implement a safety management system at a Part 121 carrier. There's a pretty good body of research from some very learned scholars here at UND, how to do it at a Part 141 school and in other settings. So that's really what my work is. It's a little bit selfish because I was formerly the 119 chief pilot for the airline, so I was directly involved in that implementation. But now, even in my role as the vice president of flight ops, I have a responsibility for our department on the execution of the safety program within our department. So it's a natural fit, and I would highly encourage you as you go along in life. There's two schools of thought with a degree. You could do something now for something completely different just to satisfy yourself and grow, but you can also grow in your current career field by look at those things that are coming on the horizon and be a first adopter at your company. Be someone who is out on the cutting edge, and you can help your company navigate through those spaces, especially if you're going to be doing it anyway. So in my case, it was a very symbiotic relationship, though there are moments where I ask myself, what the heck was I thinking when I started this? But it's a great program. So hopefully that's helpful.
We are very proud to have you as one of our PhD students, and students in the audience are cramming right now for finals next week. Captain Waltz also is cramming for a comprehensive exam that he's taking this weekend. So I didn't mean to remind him, but again, a great example of lifelong learning. So Captain Brunjes, this question is for you, and Bob, you might be able to add to it. When does United plan to bring back their flight operations internship? I know all internships at major airlines are highly coveted by the collegiate student population, and curious if you had any insights on your specific one.
Yeah, so we've had a couple conversations about that, and I don't think we fully determined it, but I expect it'll be back for the summer of 2021. So probably not, Q1, but probably Q2 or Q3. I think we'll bring the internship program back. The intern program is very, very valuable, both to the students and to us at United. It provides really a lot of lift for us out in the places where we do operations in the domiciles and at headquarters. So we really like the program. And, as Bob, suggested earlier, we've been under a big austerity program, but that's a place where we'll probably loosen the reins this coming summer. Also, the interns, it gives a little bit of advantage in the traditional pathway to the airline. And you already, those of you at UND, which is probably all of you on the phone, You already have access to Aviate, but if you didn't already, being an intern at United gives you access to Aviate.
No, that's a great question. And again, we're on the optimistic side. I would like to think we will be in a very similar vein. We look at it, right now, especially where our headquarters is located as, Dallas and the Dallas city and Dallas County, how we're manning on the campus. And really we're tying that decision for us, how we're able to come back onto campus. So we're tied very directly, in that space. So as we continue to go down that road, and we're operating at a fairly light level right now, that's going to be our biggest indicator. I am optimistic we're going to get there. I hope it's going to be by this summer, but again, please, we will spread the word, and please keep checking and coming back. You'll know, I think, when all of us know, when we start to see those, the lockdowns, proposed lockdowns, and those numbers, the case numbers start decreasing. The minute we start seeing that, and we see that vector coming down, I think we're going to see this across all our companies. We're going to start to see reopening again back to where we were. Because again, we value that. I miss having people on campus, but I really miss having our interns around, because it brings a life and vitality to the group. And it's just an exciting, time to have them there. So we're looking forward to your return.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that too, which is to piggyback on what Bob said. Safety is our number one core value at United, and I know it is at Southwest too. So we can't interview right now, right? That's one of the things. We are planning to start Aviate interviews, we think, in February, but there's a huge asterisk on that, which is, we have to plan now if we're going to start then, but we don't know if we'll be able to do it then. We'll have to see, right? And that's selection into our pipeline. But we know that the face-to-face interview is so essential for some of these that we just can't go without it. So we'll have to see how things go to make sure that we can do interviewing safely.
Well, good. I appreciate that. I know we miss having our industry partners on our campus as well. And I know I've seen both Southwest and United add many of our career fairs, and we are attempting more virtual career fairs. So hopefully as those internships come back, we'll have your colleagues there presenting on those. I think we have time for one last question, and it kind of rounds it out well, thinking about airline hiring. How do you guys anticipate hiring will start up again? Do you think it'll be a trickle-down effect, essentially the majors hiring from the regionals that then will pull from the flight instructing ranks? Or what is your thoughts? And I know the win is the million-dollar question out there, but how do you think that's going to unfold?
I'll start, Bob. Ours will be a little different than Southwest will, because we have the regional partners that we're kind of associated and attached to. The regionals haven't downsized quite as much as the main line has in our ecosystem, because we've downgauged a bunch of our route service to the smaller aircraft. So while United, when we start hiring, we will pull all the way through the pipeline, I'd say there's a fair chance that the regionals might start slightly ahead of us. We'll have to see. Certainly Commute Air is hiring right now, and will be hiring, I think, all through next year based on the growth that they're going to have. But I suspect that some of the other regionals will come back perhaps just a little bit ahead of United. When United comes back, it won't be because of the demand we see that day. It's going to be because of the demand that we see in 12 months. And that's something that we have to weigh very, very carefully, because we can't wait until the demand is on us. Otherwise, we'll be forfeiting opportunities in the marketplace. So there's a chance that we could be hiring in 2021, and it's because we'll see a recovery in 2022. And when we do start hiring, we will wait as long as we can to start hiring, because it's a commitment and it's costly, which means when we do start, it's likely to be big. Typically, we hire 60 or 80 or even 100 per month. There's a chance that we could be hiring more than that amount when we get going, because odds are that we'll wait until the last minute to execute on that. So that's my view. And yes, it'll trickle down. When we start, the regionals will be hiring from the regionals, and then the regionals will be hiring out of the flight instructor ranks, and the flight instructors will be coming from UND. So, but Bob, your view on that?
Yeah, just a slightly different view in that, we're not pulling from, regional partners per se. We've generally had we've had slow and steady hiring, and we see slow and steady kind of retirements. We did have a 600 plus pilots took an early a voluntary separation program here recently, which was a great boon for them as well as for the airline. It was helpful, through these financial times. And we do have some folks out on extended time off. So some of those will come back. We'll go through, I think, and it really will look like a part of that will be based upon demand and obviously aircraft availability. Right now we have excess aircraft, so we're in good shape, though we are going to use the MAX aircraft as we bring it back on to replace some of our older aircraft. So it's not necessarily fleet growth at this point. So when we start, I think we'll see first, we've got to see that uptick in demand. But at the minute we see that, we tend to be growth oriented. It's one of those things that fuel us. So I think when it comes, it could start, a pretty good sprint out of the gate. I don't think the numbers will be as big as what you'll see from United, but I think you'll see a consistent pool of pilots going forward that matched, kind of what we've lost in the past. So not quite as big, maybe a little bit bigger, faster, but over time, it's going to be kind of a slow and steady rate. I think that'll be very dependable. And I can't wait to get to those days, Lord knows.
So good. Well, again, great information this evening. I want to thank you both so much for joining us and doing this webinar. Again, I know I learned a lot, so I'm sure our attendees learned a lot as well. Kent, do you have any final words?
Just a fantastic presentation, gentlemen. Top notch. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you
night.
for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure being here. Bob, great being with you on the panel. And thank you, UND.
Yes, sir.
You guys have been great partners of United's, and we look forward to more in the future.